Thanks for tuning in here on 13 WMAC Plus for a look at your extended forecast. A lot to talk about with today's weather specifically. Another scorcher is already underway and some active weather is going to move in as we go into the evening and nighttime hours. But then after that, we are looking to return to more of our typical summertime pattern with about a 20–30% chance of scattered rain each day, and temperatures will be back closer to average for this time of year as opposed to the upper 90s, feeling much warmer than those values. So we'll go into a look at, first of all, your weather impact alert. Sorry, the graphics were stalling up on me right there. Dangerous heat indices and evening storms today. So for the combination of those two factors, we have decided to issue another weather impact alert for specifically really all day Wednesday, because we're already seeing heat indices continue to climb up. They can pop up as high as 109 today in our heat advisory that we have issued, but we could see some isolated spots even climb a tick or two above those numbers. In fact, I've already seen a value on the heat indices this morning, before we even get to the afternoon hours, that has topped out at 111 degrees for what it feels like a very warm start to today. Strong and severe storms, that timing going to be more so into the evening and nighttime hours, and not a guarantee that we see anything in the way of severe weather. However, with the risk of some damaging and gusty winds throughout today, that's the main impact, and we've seen that range a little bit higher than we normally do for a typical severe weather threat. So that's what we're thinking. Maybe even if you don't get a severe storm, a strong storm, one of those special weather statements, we've seen it over the last couple of weeks. They can pack quite the punch, and they can down trees, they can down power lines, and it can blow around any loose items that you do have outside. So let's go ahead and talk about the temperatures first. Yesterday, we didn't quite get as high as forecasted, which was not a bad thing whatsoever. 96 degrees for a high temperature yesterday, so that puts us really kind of smack dab in between the average high temperature of 92 this time of year and 101, which was the record for yesterday back in 1930. Dipped 1 degree below the 70-degree mark, so kind of a pleasant start to the day. At least we were trending a little bit below average somewhere. 53 degrees was the record back in 1947. I continue to tell you, thankfully, we're not in those 50s. We're not feeling that chill in the air, but with afternoon highs and the feels like numbers as high as they are each and every day, I would definitely be glad, and I'm sure many of you would also be pretty glad to see maybe a 50 pop up on that temperature map, but don't get your hopes up. We're not getting anywhere near those numbers. Didn't record any rain yesterday at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, hovering just above 2.5 inches right now, above where we should be this time of year. So that cushion slowly deteriorating, but we do have some rain chances in the forecast for this evening. I do imagine that we'll get a little bit of an extra boost in that number, probably pop back up above 3 inches above where we should be. Sunrise yesterday, 6:28. Sunset was at 8:46. We'll take a look at those sunrise and sunset times for tonight as we get into today's almanac a little bit later in the forecast. So another heat advisory today. The streak is at 2, and luckily it does look to end right there, but it also marks the second day in a row that we have a weather impact alert. We're looking to end that as well after we get through today. Evening storms with some gusty winds, and then back to the summertime pattern after we get through today. Today in the forecast, I was talking about it yesterday, it's going to kind of be that double whammy where most of our talking points are with the forecast. And we'll take a look at what's going on right now. We do have some thin high-level cloud cover. It's not doing a good job of blocking the sunshine whatsoever. Over the Georgia National Fairgrounds, lots of sunshine. Downtown Macon, lots of sunshine. Same story in Warner Robins, and the same story in downtown Dublin as you go down to Lawrence County. Even seeing a good amount of blue sky down there in Dublin, so maybe a little less cloud cover and could contribute to a little bit of a warmer trend. But right now we are seeing temperatures already near the 90-degree mark, and this is still here before the 11 a.m. hour. Our temperatures aren't supposed to get the warmest until we get to about 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but we're already seeing some 90s all across central Georgia, and if you're not to the 90 mark, then you're just a couple degrees shy. But that's not what really matters. We'll get to that in just a moment. Current temperatures all across the eastern United States. A lot warmer up to the north and the northeast of us. These areas up to the north and northeast of us were closer to the center of our heat dome yesterday. Now that heat dome is slowly falling apart. Yesterday was supposed to be that hottest day that we did have forecasted for the foreseeable future. 89 in Charleston, matching our current temperature in Macon. already into the 90s in Charlotte, Virginia Beach, and Washington, D.C., 90, 92, and 91 in those areas respectively. Areas down in Florida trending actually a little bit cooler than us for a change. That's the same with Montgomery, same with Jackson, and the same over in Texas, still in the upper 70s. But areas that far west are a little bit later to get into sunrise time and a little bit later to start that daytime heating. So that does make sense. Texas is trending a little bit cooler right now. Here's a look at your dew point temperatures. Already seeing an 80-degree dew point in Milledgeville, an 80-degree dew point down in Cordele. Remember where you see these areas right now, kind of take a little snapshot in your head of where the darkest green is present. So over to the east and northeast here in central Georgia and down along the I-75 corridor, Dooley County down into Criss County, because that's going to be a really good correlation of where the pink shaded areas are on the feels like numbers. Now thankfully I'm not seeing a value as high as I did just a little bit ago. Cordele popped up a feels like temperature for just a brief moment, so maybe a little bit of a reading error, but Cordele did have a feels like number of 111 degrees, and that was before the 10 a.m. hour. So thankfully we're not dealing with those numbers, but still not too far off in many areas across central Georgia. Lots of 100s. I think we have more triple digit numbers than we do numbers in the 90s. Thomaston feeling the best of the bunch, feels like 93 degrees, so that's already a hot day. How about 100 in Monticello, or 101 in Monticello, 103 in Eatonton, 105 in Milledgeville, 106 in Gordon, and then a 107 taking the cake for the warmest number so far over in Washington County and Sandersville, and also down here in McRae, only 1 degree off that number as well. It is just blistering hot. No way around it. These feels like numbers, you can look at it, you can hope for the best, but obviously it is just going to be a downright hot day, and paired up with that humidity, that area that you can wear is definitely in full swing. So just not a very good day to be outside whatsoever, but a very similar day to yesterday. So at least we already got a little bit of a sample to try to get used to this blistering hot heat. Not much in the way of winds right now. That's not necessarily a bad thing because like I said yesterday, it's just going to be blowing that very muggy air right in your face. So it's probably not going to feel like much of a relief whatsoever, but a steady breeze in some areas, maybe about 6 miles per hour, like in Milledgeville, 5 miles per hour in Macon, 6 miles per hour down in Cochran. Don't see any of those shades of color on the winds and wind gust map, except for up here as you make your way towards Augusta, just kind of picking at straws. There's really not much in the way of wind whatsoever. But as we go into this evening, that could be a bit of a different story. So I was showing you the Meteogram the past couple of days. I went ahead and turned that graphic off because there's no reason for showing it since it's going to undershoot your high temperatures each and every day, giving a bunch of you some false hope that, hey, maybe we'll only hit 95 or 96 for your actual temperatures. So your heat index topping out somewhere in the mid 100s and later on, just past lunchtime, is what our Meteogram is saying for Macon specifically. However, as we take a look at your heat alert and what we've seen already thus far throughout the morning hours, a heat advisory number 1 does exist for all of central Georgia and many of our neighboring counties, virtually the entire state of Georgia, just like yesterday, for feels like temperatures up to 109 degrees. Now I did mention Cordele briefly got up to about 111 degrees for the feels like temperature. That could have been a little bit of a reading error, but still, I wouldn't be surprised if an isolated area or two pops up a 110 or a 111 throughout the heat of today, but it's not going to be widespread. It's just going to be those areas that have the most moisture content and the areas that see their temperatures creep up a little bit higher into the upper 90s. This heat advisory is going to go until 8 p.m. tonight. It's a continuation of the one we got issued yesterday. So all in all, it's basically the same heat advisory that got issued yesterday. It's just continuing on till today, but counting it as a completely separate advisory because now we see a little bit of an increase in that feels like temperature. So today looking to be the hottest day for us here in central Georgia. Satellite and radar picture. Any thin cloud cover that we have is mainly over to the west and to the north of us. Not much producing anything in the way of rain. You see a little bit of that flash of light green. That's not going to be anything in the way of rain whatsoever. That's just the radar kind of hitting some things in the atmosphere, whether that's going to be maybe some bugs, or it probably is bugs, honestly, if we're being true with ourselves for this time of year, but you can see just those flashes of light green. It's nothing in the way of rain, and we're not looking at anything in the way of rain to be in the forecast until we get into this evening specifically. So right now over the state of Georgia, partly cloudy skies, not seeing anything up to the north and the northeast of us as of right now. And this is the direction we're going to keep our eyes peeled towards as we head into the second half of today. So let's take a look at today's almanac. Not any change on that average high and low temperatures, still 92 and 70 respectively. 103, the record back in 1914. I don't quite have temperatures forecasted that high, although we will be feeling well above the 103 degree mark. And we already have plenty of areas that are above, feels like numbers of 103. 59, the record low back in 1990. We didn't get anywhere close to that number. We didn't even get out of the 70s, or below the 70s rather, I should say, this morning. So right now we'll get new readings on the precipitation and year departure as we record rainfall, or maybe even don't record rainfall later on this afternoon at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. No change between that sunrise and sunset time from yesterday into today. So let's talk about today. Hot to start and a stormy evening. That's the best two ways to kind of sum it up right here. I still have the red box. We still have the weather impact alert icon right there. You do see winds northeast 5 to 15 miles per hour and some occasional gusts up to 25 miles per hour. Well, obviously we're not going to see that until we do see these storm systems move in. That's when you're going to start to get your isolated wind gusts that can get well above 25 miles per hour. But I do believe conditions will still be a little bit breezy if you maybe just catch a light shower or two later on tonight. But scattered chances of storms that are going to get more organized as they move through central Georgia because they are going to be running into a very ripe environment. A high temperature of 99 degrees when you pair it up with the humidity levels we just saw, that is definitely going to be a very sufficient environment for storm intensification. So we're really close to the 100 degree mark. I forecasted 99 yesterday and we only hit 96, and normally I'd like to get the high temperature pretty close to what it actually does record at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, but I have absolutely no complaints that we were about 3 degrees shy of the forecasted high yesterday. But with another day forecasted in the upper 90s, if we are to record 100 degrees, it would be the first time in the year of 2025 here in Macon. And I went back, did a little climatology work. The earliest time that we've ever seen the 100 degree mark has been May 26th. So that was about a month ago in time. So it doesn't look like we're going to break any record early temperatures if we do get to 100 degrees. We're actually hovering pretty close to average. July 2nd, which is actually going to be, I believe it's about a week away from today exactly. I'll have to look at the calendar, but July 2nd is the average time that we typically hit that first 100 degree day, and the latest that we've done at all time has been September 18th. And in fact, this May 26th did not happen too long ago. It was about 6 years ago in 2019 that we hit the 100 degree for the first time. I definitely remember that. That was around when my high school graduation was, and I was really remembering feeling the heat down at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. So yes, at least we're not the earliest to the punch, but we're hovering a little bit ahead of average if we do hit the 100 degree mark today. So going into this afternoon, maybe starting to see a couple of scattered showers pop up. This isn't going to be widespread by any means. Consider yourself very, very lucky if you do catch a scattered shower before the main swath looks to move through. We go into 5 p.m., lots of coverage of rain to our north, plenty of more intense weather up to the north and the northeast of us. That's just north of Charleston over in South Carolina. A good cluster of thunderstorms starting to form up in those areas. But now we go into more so the early evening hours, I would say. This is getting into about dinner time for most everyone. 7 p.m., scattered showers, a couple of scattered storms, but the timing of this. Number one, I want you to pay attention to 7 p.m. We're going to have a whole afternoon of warming to do, unless you get really lucky with the possible shower to cool you down. But it's looking like most everyone is going to get that full duration of sunlight for today. That's going to allow for that warm up. And of course, the feels like numbers are going to continue to increase. But now we start to see a lot of this active weather get closer to our neck of the woods, crossing the state line from South Carolina into Georgia, really all around the Augusta area right now, upwards to I-20. But a couple of scattered showers already beginning to pop up at 7 p.m. Now we go into 8 p.m. More organization. Like I said, this is going to be running into any remaining heat and humidity that we do have in the forecast. And 8 p.m. right now is still before the sun does officially set. So the temperatures may be a little bit cooler, but not too much cooler than what they'll be during the peak of the afternoon. So it does look like a lot more widespread impacts are forecasted as we go into about 8 p.m. tonight. Same thing with about 9 p.m., maybe even seeing these thunderstorms form more of a continuous line and seeing some segments of this bowing out shape. I was mentioning that a couple times this morning. The bowing out shape is going to be indicative of some pretty gusty winds. That's where your severe thunderstorm warnings can pack more of a punch with some of their wind parameters, or how gusty those winds get can really put them into damaging criteria. So that's what we saw this morning. It was a lot more organized uniformly. That bow was kind of really going out across all of central Georgia, but maybe only in isolated spots now, which wouldn't be a bad thing. That would limit the impacts to just a couple of areas. But that's really trying to emphasize the damaging wind threat that we could have with some potentially strong and maybe even severe weather later on this evening. And we're looking at the potential for what we call downburst, which is going to be a rapid descent of air in some isolated spots that can contribute to some isolated spots of some very, very gusty winds, even upwards to about 60 or 70 miles per hour. We'll get into more of those specific impacts in just 1 second, but you can see as we go into the nighttime hours, 10 p.m. tonight, still widespread rain in the form of showers or some pockets of some thunderstorms. But then we get to 11 p.m. closer to the midnight hour. Most of that rain is exiting stage down towards the southwest. And by the time we get to midnight, we should be entirely clear from rain. And that will take us into the overnight hours and a clear start to your Thursday morning. And then going into Thursday afternoon, we haven't seen much on the models, or at least future view, over the last couple of days. What's going to happen on Thursday? Let's see what this newest model run indicates. We do see these showers and thunderstorms coming off the Atlantic coast. So these are going to be associated what we call the sea breeze, that breeze coming off of the Atlantic Ocean, and it could propel some rising moisture all the way farther inland into central Georgia, going up the I-16 corridor. But Future View has this falling apart. I have not seen a single run where Future View even has much in the way of rain so far for your Thursday afternoon and evening. So I think you're still looking good to go. I think we'll see a little bit better coverage of rain for Thursday. However, Friday, we go into a clear start to the day. With the heat of the day, we start to see scattered rain chances, maybe a storm or two pop up. That's more reminiscent of a typical summertime forecast. And I believe this will probably be a pretty similar scenario to what we see on Thursday, even though Future View doesn't show it. We continue into your Friday evening and nighttime hours. Can't rule out a storm. You see some of those isolated pockets of maybe some yellow, maybe some orange and red. Could indicate maybe a low-end thunderstorm, maybe getting into strong to possibly severe criteria. However, I'm less confident in severe weather for your Thursday and Friday, and we'll get into more of that because now we are going straight into the outlooks. So yesterday when we were showing this day 2 storm outlook, it's now the day 1 because today is Wednesday, we were sandwiched between two areas of a level 2. There was one up to the north and the northeast, and there was one down to the south and the southwest. Well, now they have kind of merged those two areas of the level 2 together, a lot more widespread impacts, and does encompass most of the state of Georgia now. So all of central Georgia finds themselves in the yellow, which means a level 2 out of 5 risk for severe weather. And that's just going to indicate a little bit better confidence of seeing maybe some more widespread severe weather. The potential impacts, the gusty damaging winds, that's the main impact that I want to drive that point home with you. The gusty winds have been outlined for the range of 50 to 70 miles per hour. Now typically we see 40 to 60 as the typical range because that's where you get into the upper end of that range, and that will classify as a severe thunderstorm warning. But this indicates a little more confidence that winds are going to be the main driver of a potentially severe storm later this afternoon, and upwards to 70 miles per hour. Even winds of about 40 miles per hour can do their fair share of damage that we've seen recently. So getting up to 70 miles per hour, obviously it's something you definitely don't want to be outside for with all the loose items and possibly getting some trees down, especially if you get really heavy rainfall in a local area. It's going to saturate that soil, it's going to loosen it up, and it can make bigger trees more prone to being blown over. Possible hail as well. It's the summertime months. Hail is going to be a factor more often than not, kind of contrary to what you normally think. You would think when it's colder outside, we'd have a greater potential for hail, but not quite how it works. It's the opposite of that. During the summertime months, we can look at hail cores with some intense and maybe even strong thunderstorms. At the highest end of the range, they've indicated quarter-sized to maybe slightly larger than quarter-sized hail, but that's only going to be in pockets of very heavy rainfall, and that would be associated with a severe storm, especially if you get a quarter-size. That's getting above 1 inch in diameter, and that's also a driver that can contribute to a severe warning with a thunderstorm. So those are the impacts that we'll be looking out for, but I did just show you that timing, maybe moving in as early as about 6 to 7 this evening and going all the way through the evening hours into the nighttime hours and then out of here by midnight. areas up to the north and the northeast will see the impacts leave them a little bit earlier into the evening as opposed to areas down to the south and the southwest. So hopefully, if you have any outdoor dinner plans or just plans to go out and about and have dinner with friends or family tonight, make them a little bit earlier. You're going to want to be inside as things will get a little bit messy, regardless if it's severe or strong, just not something you want to be outside for. Along with that, the typical thunderstorm impacts you will feel: heavy rain in some localized areas, those heavy downpours, and some frequent lightning. And of course, when thunder roars, go indoors. And one last thing to yap about before I talk about this day 2 risk. We did get some reports up in South Carolina yesterday near Lake Murray, if any of you are familiar with that is. About 18 people did get reported to be struck by lightning. So of course, when thunder roars, go indoors. That means lightning is close enough that it can strike you. And of course, up there, unfortunately, it did have pretty widespread impacts amongst a group of people out there at Lake Murray. So I don't want any of you making the same mistake. It's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to these summertime thunderstorms. All right, enough with the app, and now we'll get to the day 2 outlook. You find all of central Georgia in a level 1, but it's not only the day 2 outlook, it's the day 3 outlook as well. Now, I just showed you what FutureView said. FutureView had no rain whatsoever on Thursday, and it's remained pretty consistent. It is maintaining that idea. It is going to stand on its business on that end. But then we go into day 3. We saw some scattered activity, maybe a little bit of a thunderstorm, but it's very scattered in nature. It's very pop-up in nature. There's not much organization to it whatsoever. So I'm still scratching my head at why we have a level 1 for day 2 and for day 3. Not quite sure if I'm really getting behind the SPC on this, because I've told you for our typical summertime pop-up showers and storms, we don't really get a severe weather outlook. This is going to be for more organized weather threats. That's why we have one today, because it's an organized system of some thunderstorms moving in. So regardless of that, we always have the potential of a strong or a severe thunderstorm each and every day during the summertime months when you have the heat and when you have the humidity. This doesn't change anything with our forecast. It's just more of me scratching my head at why they're issuing that. So let's go into your afternoon highs. 99 for a high today. I was telling you all that bad news, but there is good news. After we get through today, 93 on Thursday, 92 all the way Friday, Saturday, and through Sunday for your weekend. I don't think I've ever been so excited to forecast some low 90s for you. But of course, you have to factor in that humidity. We'll see a little bit of teeter-tottering with the muggy meter between the humid range, the very muggy range, and like I said, we typically see these values hover a little bit above what they are on the muggy meter. So I would still expect pretty similar humidity each and every day. You might have some patches of light green, maybe some relief, but it does look like the humidity is going to play a factor in the feels like number, but thankfully probably keep us closer to the triple digits as opposed to maybe upper 100s near 110. So a good reminder, too hot to trot during these temperatures. Make sure that your pets are having some form of insulation if you're taking them on these hard surfaces. We'll have temperatures even above 95 degrees today, so even warmer than 140 degrees will be the concrete. Even warmer than 155 degrees will be the asphalt, which absorbs more of that solar radiation better because it is darker in color. Take care of your friends, but also a good reminder to take care of yourself. The signs of heat illness, I'll show you the main symptoms over here on the left. If you're feeling any of these on the left, then obviously it can lead to more intense heat illness in the form of a heat stroke. So if you're starting to feel faint or dizzy, excessive sweating, getting into cool, pale, and clammy skin, nausea or vomiting, you're just really not feeling good when you're sitting outside, maybe a rapid or a weak pulse, and then even some muscle cramps. If you experience any of these symptoms, go ahead and go indoors immediately. Get yourself somewhere where you can cool your body temperature down, because any signs of heat exhaustion can lead to more intense implications with a heat stroke, and that's where you'll see many other symptoms. And some of them are the same as heat exhaustion, some of them are a little bit different. But if you go ahead and combat the symptoms over here for heat exhaustion, you won't have to worry about anything with a heat stroke. And the best way to really take care of yourself is spending a good amount of time indoors in the air conditioning. I know a lot of you are out working on job sites, maybe doing landscaping work, roofing work. Make sure you're taking frequent breaks in the shade, and along with that, having a big bottle of water to continue to drink very frequently throughout the day. So staying hydrated is going to be very key. And also, maybe just staying inside, turning on the fan, sitting on the couch, watching Netflix. As we get into tomorrow, the signs or the implications for heat illness are going to be a little bit lower. We're not going to be where it's going to be particularly as dangerous as yesterday, as dangerous as today. So hopefully the rest of the weekend will shape up mighty nice for you to get some outdoor activities in. And when you are outside, it's still going to be a good day for the pool, but I went out to the pool myself yesterday and it was feeling a little bit like some lukewarm bath water. It was definitely a pretty warm day, and even Aspen was out there with me and she wasn't having too much fun. She was laying in the shade and I said, okay, it's about time to get you some ice water and bring you back inside. So those heat advisory safety tips, I really kind of just went over them. But another thing I didn't just say, don't leave your pets or your children in vehicles, and don't leave anyone else, even if they aren't pets. Maybe they're just friends or family. Don't leave anyone in a vehicle for an extended period of time with that air conditioning off. Cars can heat up a lot faster than most areas, and we definitely do see our fair share of, unfortunately, some people passing away from heat exhaustion and heat stroke within vehicles because they do warm up so quickly. So not even if it's for a minute, not even if it's just for 2 minutes to run into the gas station. Nope, it's a big no right there. Don't leave your pets or your children in a vehicle during heat spells like this. Drink plenty of water. Along with that, make sure you're maintaining your fair share of electrolytes, Gatorade and Powerade, great drinks to have during this time of year. And wear sunscreen, and not only apply it, make sure you're reapplying it along with some protective coating, because the sun is going to be out in full force. You don't want to risk getting sunburnt, because obviously that leads to some skin poisoning or sun poisoning, excuse me, for some people that are a little bit more sensitive, and it can lead to patches of skin cancer later on in life, and that's not something that we want whatsoever. So let's talk more about the long-range models. I did mention Thursday and Friday looking like we'll settle back into more of the typical summertime forecasts. You may have to duck and dodge a shower or even a storm in nature, but more likely than not that you will remain dry. That looks to be the case for Saturday. That looks to be the case for Sunday. And then we go into Monday. Pretty widespread across the southeast corner of the United States. There could be a reasoning for maybe more widespread rain as we go into the next couple of days. And then we go into Tuesday and on into Wednesday, where it does look like the southeast is just going to enter a very wet period. But like I said, it's still looking like it's mainly going to be of the scattered variety, not many organized systems, but we'll continue to keep an eye out if anything changes with that. So for your weather impact alert, going to go for all day today. That's going to go until about the midnight hour when storms are expected to finally clear the area. For heat indices up to 109 for the first part of today, and then those evening time storms that will linger into the nighttime. What you need, have your phone to get possible warnings tonight, and make sure you're taking care of your body during the blistering heat. Then the rain chances go down, the temperatures go down. These numbers will feel a little bit warmer as long as we keep that humidity in the forecast, but hopefully not too high above the triple digits. And if we can keep this forecast around as we roll into the beginning of July, keeping our fingers crossed that we have some good weather for 4th of July weekend coming up next weekend. So let's briefly talk about the tropics. We did have one area of potential development yesterday. In fact, it did form our first named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. That was Tropical Storm Andrea. Just as quick as it popped up, it was just as quick to dissipate. It is already gone. It was simply just a fish storm out in the North Atlantic, and now we have no activity expected within the next 7 days in the Atlantic Basin. So we cross out the name Andrea on our 2025 hurricane list. The next name would be the B letter. That would be Barry. Then you're getting to Chantal, I believe is how you pronounce that. A lot of these we have to go study the pronunciation for. Dexter, Aaron, Fernand, and then Gabrielle. And then, of course, we'll continue about the list of 20 or so names. If we go past this, which right now the way Atlantic hurricane season has started doesn't even look like we'll get halfway through. But of course, we don't see that peak typically until we get into September. September 10th is that peak of hurricane season when we start to get the most frequency of storms rolling off